Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Excusez-moi, je voudrais en savoir plus sur les études culturelles françaises. Ok, pas de problème.
Unlike the British tradition of cultural studies, the French focus on popular culture emerged principally from two such sources. On the one hand, the field of historiography, and on the other, existentialist philosophy, especially its Marxist-oriented developments.
Pierre Bourdieu at present is the most influential figure in French sociology. Pierre Bourdieu. Its work lies for theoretical assumptions. Primary focus is on the production and reproduction of structured inequalities. He tends to see class as two cores through which to view the contemporary forms of social differentiation. He uses the concept of field or a structured social space with its own rules. The focus, according to him, should neither be the individual nor subjectivities, but instead agency, wherein people pursue strategies by which various forms or structuration are accomplished. With his theoretical basis, he avoids to believe that social action, as determined by environmental and ideological forces and culturally determined rules. Pierre Bourdieu advocates the methodological objectivism. Social agents are rarely subjectively conscious of the strategies they employ in the process of social structuration. The result of their actions have a certain objectivity that can be detached from subjective intention. The task is to connect these structured inequalities with the objectively observable and describable strategies for producing them. He also does not assume that members of a dominant group act consciously to maintain their status, nor do they act according to a specific ideology. Finally, the struggle for control is not only for material wealth but symbolic capital, or a possession of which serves to establish some members of society as culturally competent to the exclusion of others. The three fields of symbolic capital are number 1, education, number 2, taste, and finally, language.
Mikhail Bakhtin. He wished to preserve the uniqueness and plurality in the forms of everyday social life. He employed the term unfinalizability to indicate that human experience is radically open and full of creative potential. Para sa kanya, unfinalizability respects the possibility that a person can change and that a person is never fully known in the world. Isa pang concept na diniscuss niya ay dialogue. He said that there should be a speaker, audience, and context. He employed the term polyphony, or weaving of different voices and forms of experience. He suggested that language must be viewed as comprised of many languages. Example, Jejemon, Bekemon, and Konyo. He also introduced the term heteroglossia. No one language is allowed to dominate. He also coined the term carnival, or employing the devices of parody and laughter in order to undermine the hegemony. Okay. Ang saya-saya, no? Michel de Certeau.
In his book, The Practice of Everyday Life, written in 1984, he presents his most influential ideas in the field of cultural studies. He said that the central problem of critical theory in the late capitalist society is that consumption has become a form of production. The consumers now are not merely passive consumers in the overall circulation of commodities and wealth. Rather, the consumers take the original goods and remake them to serve their own interests and express their own values and aspirations. Mass-produced commodities are transformed into cultural forms that oppose the dominant culture that produced them. Examples of these are tie-dyed t-shirts of the 1960s, mutilated genes of the punk and grunge movements, lowriders of Hispanic groups in the western United States. Parallel, interpretative, or semiotic level, according to him, are meanings produced by a dominant ideology that are split apart and configured in the process of cultural consumption, thereby actively producing oppositional meanings from the original semiological material. In language, he says that context is important because it is a determinant of its actual meaning and its semantic or logical content. Context is how a statement is used, by whom was a statement used, and which situation a statement is used. Context-dependent character is found in all types of signification. This character provide materials for revision, reconfiguration, and opposition to their original and ordinary usage. An example is the statement, "That's a really bad car." That statement can have different meanings when spoken by a dealer to a potential buyer, a manufacturer to a mechanic of another automobile company, or a black ghetto youth. A strategy is a form of action and policy characteristic of a dominant society. It is a type of political, economic, and scientific rationality capable of formalizing goals to be accomplished in a specific environment that intends to dominate. An example is marketing strategy. It is an ensemble of methods by which a commercial enterprise attempts to achieve a dominant share of a given market. Tactic cannot count on a given, fixed, or proper space. It must function opportunistically. Functions in space formed by someone else's strategy. Tactics are found in many everyday practices such as talking, reading, moving around, shopping, cooking, and the like. The best example for a strategy and tactic environment is the modern shopping mall. Malls are planned and developed for marketing strategies to maximize access to the various shops located in it. However, public places in the mall are tactically appropriated by various groups whose aim is quite different or even opposed to patronizing the mall's merchants. Public places are used as meet-up or hangout places.
Views history as a long-term development. He mentioned that historiographers must acknowledge three different types of time. First is the geographical time. It concerns the very long-term relation of human beings to the environment. Second is the social time. It is the long-term course of human institutions and attitudes. Third is the individual time. Short-term experience of individual human beings and groups in historical events. Introduced three concepts in French historiography. First is the notion of everyday life as the basic site of the experience of Brodell's individual time. Actions and cultural productions of the princes and the rich should be read as anomalies than as a norm because they constitute only a tiny percentage of the total population. Another concept is notion of mentalities, the general mindsets of various groups by which their experiences of everyday life were mapped, configured, and given meaning. Lastly, he discussed ideologies, rejects the idea that ideologies were in any way simple, constant, or direct. Wrote the quotidian wherein everyday life of modern societies is defined by recurring routines of labor and leisure and characterized in what he termed bureaucratically controlled consumption. He also introduced the ideology of consumerism that drove expansion of mass culture in advanced industrial societies. This concept penetrated into the quotidian, affecting every aspect of our existence. He also called the attention to a dialectic between the integrative, non-integrative, and transgressive.